Welcome to Living Martial Arts with Master Ray Gale, aka the Dark Master. Living Martial Arts discuss and examines the everyday exercise, philosophy, and lifestyle of the martial arts enthusiast. The host talks about his own training, past and present, and he also interviews many martial artists to discover how they continue to live their own martial arts journey. Tune in for top tips on how to get the best out of your martial art. Or perhaps you're thinking of starting a martial art. This podcast offers you an easy way to dip your toe in. Sign up for the newsletter at livingmartialarts.com and get regular updates and training tips direct to your inbox. Follow the Dark Master on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Living Martial Arts.
Hello and good day to all the Living Martial Arts podcast fans. It's me, the Dark Master, back with another fantastic guest. It's great to say that I've got a lady martial artist on the other line. And we haven't interviewed many ladies, but it's great to have Karen Findley on the line, who has got a magnificent past, which we should talk about very soon. So first of all, Karen, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Raymond. Yeah, how are you?
Excellent, excellent. Oh, I have to say, only my mother used to call me Raymond, but Ray's fine.
Oh, right.
I could tell when my mum was upset. She'd say Raymond. you know how mums do.
Yeah.
No worries. I just want to say, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate you coming to chat. We've been introduced through a mutual friend. I looked at some of the things that you've done, you've achieved, and I must say, wow, you've certainly got a great history, which we can talk about and discuss. You can let the listeners know. So without further ado, really, Karen, I just want to say, ask you, how did you get into martial arts, and when and where did your martial arts journey start?
Well, when I was in school at 14, I had a bully who was trying to scare me. And I decided to stand up to the bully. And I did. And she was massive. And the teachers found out that she was, threatening to kill me at the school gate, and they quashed it. But I stood up to her. But afterwards, I quaked in my boot because I thought, I never want to feel like that again. And my sister's boyfriend, Ralph Hadley, happened to do martial arts, and he was at the Halewood Karate Club. And whilst he was at my home with my sister, he mentioned he was a green belt at the time. And I thought, oh, that would be good. I mean, if I ever got into that situation again, that would come in really useful, because I didn't like that feeling of being scared. Even though I'd stood up to the bully, I felt the fear. So I asked him about it, and he said, well, come along. He said, it doesn't suit everybody, because it's quite a tough club. And I was quite a skinny 14, 15-year-old. And he said, it doesn't suit everybody. Come down, watch your class. So I went down and watched a class. And he said, what did you think? And I said, oh, yeah, I really liked it. He went, well, it doesn't suit everybody. Just try a class. Don't buy the outfit. I think he thought it wasn't going to be suitable for me. Don't buy the outfit. Just try a class and see what you think. So I went down. I took a couple of friends with me, and I tried a class, and I loved it. And they hated it. It was a really, really tough class, but I just loved it. So then I used to go on my own, and I used to spend my pocket money every week, get the bus by myself, spend my pocket money going to these karate classes. And it just suited me. I just loved it. The club I was at was a fantastic club. They were very, very welcoming, very hard training. But very friendly outside of the dojo. And then it just went from there. I stuck at it, and there wasn't any women's kumite in the KUGB at the time. And the lads were very, very much into kumite, into fighting. So the club was very kumite based. We did basics and kata as well, but the lads were really really sort of thrilled with fighting. That was their thing. So of course I was fighting with them. I was the only girl in the club at the time, and so I was learning to fight with people who were much bigger than me and much stronger than me. And I just took to it like a duck to water. I just loved it. But again, I wasn't allowed to fight in competition, so I used to enter kata competitions. They fight. I'd watch them fighting. I'd enter the kata. And then Chris said to me one day, there's an all styles open competition, a Shukakai Nationals, and it's open to all styles. It's in Manchester. Would you like to try it? And I went, yeah, certainly, yeah. I think I was a first queue at the time. So I went along, and I ended up winning that competition.
Wow.
Of course, the lads were thrilled. So, and then it went from there. I just entered lots of competitions with them. We went up and down the country entering as many competitions as we could. And I think Chris Hepburn was running a series of competitions all over the country. So I entered all of those and was successful in a lot of those. And then they had one particular championship called the Champion of Champions. And that was a competition for everybody that had won a Cliff Hepburn tournament was invited to all meet and compete against each other. And I won that. And then shortly after that, the KUGB started to realise that, they were falling behind and that they should introduce women's kumite.
Yeah.
And they actually introduced it in the Shotokan Cup. I think I'm just trying to remember what year that was. I'm trying to think. I think it was 1983. That's right. It was 1983. That was the first women's kumite competition, the Shotokan Cup, and I won that. And then we had the national.
I'm just going to stop it, but I will come back to that. I'm going to stop you because there's a couple of things that I just want to come back to and explore a little bit. But I'll come back to 1983 and the cup. But you mentioned that. Well, there's two things that sort of resonate with me. First of all, you mentioned that you were quite small, and I'm taking my experience because I started again mid-70s. I was a very small. I still am. I'm only 5'6", and I was quite tiny. And in those days, I mean, you just mentioned there were no weights, so I was fighting men as a 15, 16-year-old boy, and I was getting hurt. So they were bigger and stronger. So therefore, what I did was I changed my style of fighting to a very sort of counter-attacking style, getting them to commit themselves. So my question from there is how did you handle it, and how did you what sort of how did you get around bigger opponents?
Well, I was very much an attacking fighter, and I just used to sort of get in between. Inside their guard, I'd attack them. I'd make quite a bit of distance. I think because I'd been training with the guys, I had to make distance with the guys in the club. They were all different sizes, but they were all bigger than me. And so making that distance quickly was something I'd developed. And I think that helped me when I was fighting bigger opponents.
Okay. Now that's interesting because I think it's, I often say to my students now that actually, they go, oh, this person's really bigger than me. So they're like 4 inches. I said, yeah, great. And they look at me as if I've lost my mind. And I say, what you have to do is remember that we all have skills and in different areas. So when you're small, you can move quickly. So you've got to use that to your advantage. I don't know if that, that resonates with you.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I think if you've got very fast leg work, I think your footwork is really important.
Yeah,
I think if you can develop really fast, dynamic footwork, that will get you in and out before you get hit.
Definitely. Which was what my, people know me for my movement in Taekwondo. But then I also said people, well, I had to. My first tournament, I had my ribs broken. And although I enjoyed the tournament, I thought, well, I'm not going to do that again. Not the same way. So you have to sort of change your game plan.
Right. Well, I had my fair share of black eyes in competition and a
Mm.
depressed cheekbone. I had my front teeth smashed in. They were knocked they were facing my tonsils.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the type of training, because the training was really tough, it
Mm.
really developed that mind over matter. So you sort of didn't notice the injuries till afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. My second question from what you said in that first bit was, why? And again, I always use myself an example. I was my mum brought me up to be very very independent, and quite tough really. She was first generation immigrant from Jamaica, and she was very very tough in all areas. I had to do my chores, whatever. So when I went to taekwondo, I was very disciplined. I was very disciplined, and when they asked me to do something, I always did it. I always did it to the best of my ability. But my question to you is what made you stick with it? Because most people at that time didn't stick with it, particularly because it was too tough. So were you like that as a child? What made you do that?
I think I was very disciplined. I think when I first started school, I used to win lots of awards for enthusiasm and cooperation. And I
Mm,
think if I did something, then I did it 100%.
yeah,
If it caught my attention and I really enjoyed it, then I was completely enthusiastic about it, and it was, really important to me to do my best. And
yeah,
I think I'm like that with anything that I'm really interested in. And I think
sure.
it's just part of your personality, isn't it? I mean, I taught myself how to swim. I used to take myself training when I was young. My mum didn't have a car, so she didn't drive me there. It was just I used my pocket money for it. It was, that was just how I was brought up. I used to go swimming on my own and practice until I could taught myself how to swim. I didn't have a swimming
Yeah.
instructor, so I think that's just part of your makeup. If you've got that sort of mindset
Mm.
from your background, then I think you can apply that to anything and be fairly successful.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I said two questions. I've got another one here. The I mean, I did very well at sports at school. I was good football. I was a good rugby player, Christian, and stuff like that. And I like team sports, but when I found martial arts, although I was doing it with other people, I was very individual. I used to go to football training and was really upset that people didn't train as hard as me. Um, but then when I went to martial arts, I could. It was a bit individual, but I was part of a group. So I don't know. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, I was in a fantastic club. I mean, all the lads
Mm,
trained really, really hard, and they were all friends because we all socialized outside as well. We were a group of friends. What happened was the main instructor was. It started off with John Cullen running the club and Billy Crystal
mm,
and Jeff Young, and then John Cullen left, Billy Crystal left, Jeff Young went to America, so it was left to the lads to run the club. And they decided they wanted to do more of the kumite because they really enjoyed it. So they used to travel to other clubs to learn how to train to be good at kumite. And then they'd bring it back to our club. So we didn't have one individual sensei after that, which was a good thing because everybody had the same mindset and they all took turns of instructing, and they would travel to other clubs, bring back whatever they were doing to our club, and then take the class. And so it was an unusual club. There was like a fantastic camaraderie between everybody.
yeah,
Um, and that made for a very unique club. And there was like lots of jokes after training, and we were just a really cohesive group. And it made the whole thing enjoyable. The training was really enjoyable because it was really hard, and then the socializing was really funny. And I mean, Liverpool people are renowned for their sense of humor. We had a load of people telling joke after joke after joke. So even after training, it was just good fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's great because I think certain thing as a young person set you up for things later on, and you don't really realize it until you get there and you think, oh yeah, I probably did this because I was this type of person. But I was very very determined. That was my mother. She always said to me, "No, you need to be better than anyone else. And, you need to do this. You can do better." She always pushed me hard, and I think that sort of came over when I started doing my martial arts. I thought, well, I need to do better than this.
Yeah.
And I think it's building that mindset. That early martial arts mindset, because I'm sure people listening to this, we're talking about this, and I can, I know some of the things that you've done, but you must have had a fantastically strong mindset, not just to start it, but to carry on, in quite a tough environment.
Yeah, I just loved it. I just found it really challenging.
Mm,
When something really challenges you and you never feel that you're you oh, how can I explain it? It's always a challenge. You never feel good. You're always challenged. And
yeah,
that kept me interested.
yeah,
And I was never, even though I used to compete, I wasn't a competitive person with other people. I was competitive within myself.
yeah,
So even if, like, I remember, I think I'd won the nationals or something, and I came off, and Chris said to me, "Oh, well done." And I said, "Yeah, I didn't fight very well. Next time I need to do this and this." So it wasn't really the winning; it was
yeah,
the performance. Had I given my best?
yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
was never fully happy unless I'd given my best.
Yeah, yeah. I think we were probably living parallel lives there by the sounds of it. So yeah, nice one. Well, coming back now to 1983, you mentioned about the national championship. So perhaps you could expand on that for us.
Yeah, so that was the very first time they'd introduced women's kumite into the KUGB. Um, and it was a national championship, but they had two national championships a year. They had one, which was the Shotokan Cup, which was just individuals, so there was no team events. And then they had the nationals, which was held at Crystal Palace, which had team events in it. So that very first Shotokan Cup, I entered, and it was the first time a lot of women had fought. I'd fought in all styles competitions, so I had some background, but a lot of the women had never fought. So it was a bit of a bloodbath, to be honest. There was a lot of smashed noses and
Mm,
poor control. But I really watched after that competition that the standard changed. People started to realize that, there's a certain way of training for kumite, and then they started training more, I think, with the men in the club rather than just with the women, which really helped the standard of the women come up after that.
well, it's sorry. Carry on, carry on.
Well, I don't really know what else to say about that.
Right. Sorry, I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you. Well. First of all, I will say, we don't. There's not many women that I've spoken to who I can think are genuinely pioneers for women martial arts. I think you are, Karen. As I said, I don't know you that well. I know you through a friend, and they had some fantastic things to say about you, and about what you've managed to achieve. But and I know you're quite modest, but you're definitely a pioneer for women's martial arts in the UK. And I'm very honoured and privileged to chat to you about it, which is great. So well done you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. It's not something I think about. It was just training, and that was just part and parcel of training. So you didn't sort of dwell on what you'd done. You just got on with it and carried on training. Enjoyed it.
You've won a national championships. You won that 6 times, and you 5 times as European championship, and you came third in the World Cup in 1990. Is that correct?
Well, you've given me a bit more than I did. I was in the final of the national championships, which is the one where they have the team events. I was in the
Okay.
final 9 times, but I won that 5 times. The,
Okay.
the Shotokan Cup I won 6 times. The Europeans I won twice, and I came third in the world. And then I did some local competitions as well, but they're the main ones, the main things that I'd say I did. But again, they didn't mean anything. It was the and that sounds a bit silly, but at the time it was just that's what we did. We all travelled together at our whole
Yeah.
karate club, and we all did our competitions, and then we got back to training, which was the main focus of what we were doing.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I think yeah, you're right. I think martial arts back then was a little bit more of, oh, this is what we do, and if you win a trophy, great, but you're back in training the next time, and because there wasn't the the sort of social media, you know people within the art knew about it, but others didn't. so,
Yeah.
so you'd sort of you could sort of almost keep it quiet, really, and no one else would know about it apart from the people who train martial arts.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So it was really much fun. So you also, I mean, you did compete for the KUGB for a number of years as well, didn't you?
Yeah, for 10 years.
Yeah, and how was that? How did you find that? Was it something that was a couple of years, or did it just happen?
It just happened, and you just sort of went along with it. It was just part and parcel of your training, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
it was not. I think I was the first woman to be invited on the KUGB squad for Kumite,
Hmm.
and then they got a small group of people together, and we used to train regularly every couple of months with Sensei Inoida, and the training was really hard, but again, sort of that group of people, the guys were so good
Hmm.
that you used to train with them. You'd train with them on the squad. I mean, they had good control, but they were really good. But it always kept you sort of striving to be better because you weren't as good as them. So it was always you had to train harder because you couldn't match them for strength. So the idea was you just had to train as hard as you possibly could, and twice as hard as them if you could. If
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
Well, it does, and I think with any physical pursuit, the way to get better is to associate with people that are better than you, and get in with there and do it with them, and that does, push you forward. But I found that myself. Um, you know, uh, Strange enough, I mean, again, we're living sort of parallel lives, because 1983 was a great time for me when I sort of almost broke through then, sort of internationally. But I've been, I remember my very first training session. I was living in Bristol. I went to Glasgow, Scotland, St Andrews actually, to train with the squad, which was a real eye opener because they were so good. But I kept on doing it. I kept on training with them, and I kept getting better, and I was getting closer and closer to them. So I think that's the thing. Anybody listening to this is you have to push yourself, and you have to train with people that are gonna find you out initially.
Yeah.
But you're gonna get closer to them. Would you say that?
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you an example of one thing that happened to me on the squad. We had to pair up. We were in threes, and I was in a three with Frank Brennan and Ronnie Christopher,
Oh, okay.
and the loser stayed in.
Right.
So I was in for quite a while.
Yeah. See, it's interesting, isn't it? Because like I said, sometimes certainly for me, doing things like anything at a time, it's your worst nightmare. But then it turns out to be the golden nugget that you the golden ticket, Willy Wonka's golden ticket,
Yeah.
because you learn so much in a short space of time.
Yeah, and I think that was the key to everything. I think the guys in the club I came from were really good fighters,
Mm,
and they were really tough, and they had a really good mindset. And I was fighting with them all the time,
mm,
and I think that just keeps you on the boil.
yeah,
You're always fighting with people who are better than you,
yeah, definitely,
and I
yeah,
think that's the key. And it keeps you very humble, and it's always a challenge, which is great.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, coming back a little bit to your days doing kata and kumite as well, is that I mean, I sort of train daily now still myself. Were you a self-motivated trainer, or did you have a training partner? How did that work?
Well, I trained mainly in the club, and
Mm,
then I used to travel to other clubs as well. So sometimes I'd go and I'd visit Terry O'Neill's club
mm,
in Liverpool, and I was lucky in Liverpool. We had lots of really good clubs.
yeah.
So I'd visit Terry O'Neill's club for extra training, and I'd visit Steve Cattle's club in
Oh,
in in Kirkdale for extra training. And
yeah.
then once I was invited onto the squad, I started training at the Liverpool Red Triangle as well.
Mm,
But that was only once I was invited onto the squad. So, and I was working full time. At the time, I'm a physio now, but at the time, I had a job in an office that allowed me to work 9 to 5, so I could leave and go training.
mm,
It wasn't a career as such. It
yeah.
was it was a job. I did it to the best of my ability, as I do with anything I do, but it wasn't a career. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
allowed me, I was on flexi time, so it allowed me to leave the office and go training.
Right.
Uh, and I think it was the fact that you were able to go to other clubs, really good clubs with really good instructors, that
Yeah.
um, really helped me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, up north in the Liverpool area, were really a gold mine for training. I remember starting because I started in the southwest, and when I read all the magazines, everybody seemed to be up north. Frank Brennan, all those guys, Terry O'Neill, Steve Castle, all the Bob Pointer, and all people like that. Everybody seemed to be. I mean, certainly Liverpool was a real gold mine of martial arts.
Yeah,
Uh, and well, it still is. It still is.
yeah. Well, I'll give you an example of the type of club that Hale Wood was. There was a guy called Peter Reynolds that trained at the Kirby Club, and he was very, very tough and very good, and had a really, really hard attitude. And the the people that trained with him actually complained about him to the instructor. He was too tough. He was too rough with them, and so he got kicked out of that club. And we welcomed him in Hale Wood to our club.
Oh, right.
And, and so the lads in our club loved him because he pushed them to train harder. And that was the sort of club I belonged to.
Yeah, yeah,
That and rather than complain about him, they trained harder to meet him, and he brought their standards up as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so it was the club had a great attitude.
Right. No, that's excellent. See, you mentioned I did see on some notes that you started training as a physiotherapist, which is I think what you do now. You moved to Canada. Why was that? What happened in Canada?
Well, what happened is I went over there on holiday,
Mm,
and I really liked the lifestyle over there. It was a really nice work-life balance. And at
yeah.
the time, my husband was offered a job while we were over there.
Right.
And so my husband at the time, we're divorced now, but and we came back and said, well, what should we do? Should we do it? Should we not do it? And we thought about it and thought, well, I think I was 40 at the time. And I thought, well, if we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. Let's try it. If it doesn't work out, we'll come back.
Mm,
And so we took a gamble and went over there, and we ended up opening our own club over there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we sort of have the same type of training that we'd had back home.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, and so it was, and then we ended up. I think we were teaching the BC team. We took them to a few tournaments and things,
yeah.
and
Oh, that's great. Yeah. What part? I mean, I've got relatives. I've been to Canada a number of times. I've got relatives in Toronto. Which side of Canada was it?
it's the West Coast. It was Vancouver. So,
Oh,
so
right.
Vancouver's very different than the rest of Canada.
It is. Yeah, I've heard.
It's
Yeah,
very temperate climate. It's on the same latitude as Paris, so it gets weather like Paris. It doesn't get the freezing winters and the
mm,
boiling summers, but it gets lovely summers, and it's
yeah,
beautiful. It is a beautiful city.
yeah,
Um, and then if you're wondering why I came back, because it was a beautiful city and I've come back to Liverpool, my niece came out to visit me and she stayed with me for a month. And we laughed and laughed and laughed. And I realised I missed the Liverpool humour.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, I'd been in a team in our club was just full of humour.
Mm.
And I didn't realise how much I missed that being away from home. So that was one of the reasons. And then the other reason was I came home every year to visit my mum and dad. And every year I came home, I saw that they'd aged in that
Right.
year.
Yeah.
And I thought I might only see them a handful of times.
Yeah.
And it made me sit back and go, what am I doing miles away from my family and my friends?
Yeah.
And my niece left my home on the 1st of September. And on the 3rd of October, I landed back in Britain with 2 suitcases and a bag round my neck and all my furniture on a ship. And then I came back to my home club and it was great. And I don't regret it at all. I mean, it doesn't look anything like Vancouver, but it makes you value the things that are really important in life.
Yeah. It feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
lovely. And even now I've still got friends I started school with
Yeah.
that I see, are still in contact with them. I've got all my guy from the club. We meet the guys from the club. I arrange every year a meetup
Yeah.
because one of them, the guy I was talking to you about before, Peter Reynolds, he passed away a few years ago now, which was a massive loss to us. And so I arrange every year for a Christmas night out where me and the guys from the team, we all meet up and we go for dinner every Christmas.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
There's one missing, which is sad, but it's really nice to do that and have that meet up every year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my parents they retired back to Jamaica in the, I mean, they're both passed away now, but in the late 90s. And, people say, oh, would you ever fancy going to, living in Jamaica? And I said, no. I said, I'd miss everyone. I'd miss my martial arts. Jamaica's nice. It's sunny and hot, but it's not me. I'd feel like a bit of a duck in the water, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think that yearning for somewhere that you feels like home is well, it's with all of us, really, isn't it? It's with all of
Yeah.
us. Yeah, it's
I-
good. So I was going to say, I think with somewhere like Liverpool, and I've seen a lot of people, a lot of Scousers and whatever, and they have got a great sense of humour, and it's a family sort of place.
Yeah. And since I've come back, I really appreciate this country.
Mm.
The things that you sort of take for granted, when you come back, when you've lived abroad, I think it gives you a different perspective and you come back and you really appreciate things more. So I'm glad I did it. It was a really good experience.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Well,
and
that's
it
great.
really, yeah, I definitely appreciated the karate more when I came back as well.
Yeah.
Get back to my old club and the old way of training and that was good. Um, and the weather doesn't bother me anymore.
I think it's quite. To be honest, it's good. I mean, I remember I went to Australia in '91 to do with martial arts at the time, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. People say, "Oh, why didn't you like it?" I said, "Well, it's just hot all the time. It's whatever. There's nothing. The seasons are great. Actually, I like spring and I love autumn. I do like summer as well, but those times I can train and feel good."
Yeah.
So changing the seasons. I mean, I posted something recently on my Facebook about the blossom, the spring blossom on my tree. Just looked beautiful. It changes from that, nothing on it to that blossom, which is just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. It's little things you appreciate, even just something as simple as the bird calls in the morning.
Hmm.
When I was in Vancouver, there were a lot of crows. I was back right by this. It was beautiful where I was, but there's a lot of crows, a lot of seagulls. And when I came home and you could hear the bird song in the morning, really early in the morning, I just
Yeah,
loved it. All the different sounds of the birds, because
yeah,
there's
yeah,
variety. And I didn't appreciate that before I left the country.
yeah. Yeah, no, so moving on from there, you also had so you had some problems with your retinas fraying. Was that to do with the martial arts?
Yeah, I think because we didn't wear mitts then, and
Mm,
I did get a lot of black eyes in competition,
mm,
and um, quite a lot of heavy knocks at the time. Not heavy enough to I wasn't knocked out or anything, but I used to get quite a lot of knocks,
mm,
and I didn't think anything of it. But when I went to the optician in Canada, he said to me that my retina was fraying, and I said, "Which eye?" And he said, "Both." And I was
mm,
like, oh, that's not good. So I just don't really, I'm just careful who I train with now.
mm,
Um, but if there's, I don't really do kumite per se anymore. I'll do
mm.
partner work, but I'll make sure I'm with somebody who's sensible rather than somebody who's got no control and
Yeah.
take a chance because they said to me, avoid getting knocked in the head and avoid things like bungee jumping and that sort of thing because, as I
Mm.
say, they could see the start of fraying on both retinas. But I think that was from all the knocks I took at the time.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And I see that you're, as I mentioned, you're a physiotherapist. You're also part of the physiotherapist team for Great Britain's shooting team. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've just retired from that, but what
Oh, right.
yes, only because I'd traveled for over 5 years, and I was
Mm,
traveling a lot, and so I was missing training. I loved it. Don't get me wrong, the job was fantastic. Working with the athletes was a real privilege.
mm,
It was a really lovely job. But after 5 years, I'd sort of had enough of the traveling. I wasn't home very often. Sometimes I'd be away for 3 weeks. Sometimes I'd be away for 10 days. I'd be home for a day and then away again. And there was little time to catch up and you were missing your training. Obviously, I'd train myself when we were away.
mm.
Um, but it's something I don't like people seeing me training in martial arts. I think if I'm going to be training in martial arts, it'll be in my room where nobody can see me. I'm not one of the people that wants to be seen. As I think, yeah, I just don't like that. I just like to be, sort of out of the limelight and doing my own thing where nobody
Yeah,
can see. So I'd go to the gym and use the gym, do some light weights and things, but it wasn't
yeah,
the same as being in a club where you're training in the club. And
sure.
as I say, after 5 years, that was a really good time. But it was time for me to do something else. So now I just work from home. I have a private practice at home that I had before as well that I run, but that's just like very small one man band thing. And I treat a lot of the lads from the club and when they have injuries. And I think it was a good thing to go into when I got to the point where I was competing. And when I got to the stage where when I was winning, it became a relief rather than a joy.
Yeah,
So I knew it was time to retire, but also my sister was terminally ill.
yes,
And
yeah,
I just got a place at university to do physiotherapy. The reason I wanted to do physiotherapy, I'd had an injury just before a world championships. I had a massive hematoma on my ankle. And I got it just before I was going out to the World Championships in Canada. And I did all the wrong things. I carried on training, which is what we were always taught to do. You just keep going, keep going. And I treated it incorrectly. And it had a big impact on me.
mm,
And that's what made me think, right, what would I like to do? Now I'm thinking of retiring.
mm,
I have a career. So what career would I like to do? And I thought, well, I'd like to be a physio. I'd like to understand how to treat injuries properly. And I'd really love to be able to diagnose injuries.
yeah,
When you have something, I'd had a problem with my hip, and
right.
I'd been to people and nobody could tell me what it was. I know what it was now. It was coming through from the joint in my back. My sacroiliac joint wasn't moving correctly. It's slightly out. And that was from doing the Shirogeri and hitting objects, hitting bags or hitting people, that it was slightly putting the joint out and it was causing um, something to be trapped in the front of my hip.
Mm, yeah,
that was my goal. It was to be able to diagnose problems. And so what I did was I had a job that gave me a cheap mortgage. I had my own home. I had a job. I lived on my own at this time. And I had a job that gave me a 5% mortgage when mortgages were 17%.
Oh yeah, I
So
remember that.
yeah, so it was a real perk of the job.
Mm,
And I decided that I was going to give that up and put myself back into college and
mm,
because I'd been out of school for 13, 14 years, go back to college and then apply for physio school. And what happened was I gave my job up and sort of tightened my belt and ate beans and potatoes for a while,
mm.
and did a 2-year course in 1 year, crammed it into 1 year, applied to all the physio schools and they all rejected me. So I contacted the school and said, look, what do I need to do to get in? Because there were 2,000 applicants applying for 30 places. So
Right.
they could pick the cream of the crop. So what I decided to do was they have clearing in August when people get their A-level results. And I'd been told that sometimes if you go down a clearing, then you may get a place. But this year there weren't going to be any places because there was a massive waiting list. So I said to the woman, well, I'll go down this year and I'll get my face known for next year. So I went down with a book and I sat in clearing every day and just read my book. And as I didn't want to be a nuisance, so I thought I'll take a book, so I'm not being a nuisance. So I just sat there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the staff were coming in and out, and they'd stop and they'd say to me, "Why, why do you want to be a physio?" And I said, I did karate and I had this injury, and I'd really like to know how to deal with injuries, and I've given my job up, and blah blah blah. Anyway, the staff got to know me because I was there every day for 5-6 hours a day. So by
Right.
the time the last day, the Thursday came, and I said to the head of school, who was called George, I knew his name by now, and I said, right, George, I'll see you tomorrow. And he went, no, Karen, he said, don't come back tomorrow. If anything comes up, we'll let you know. And I thought, oh, well, hope I wasn't a nuisance. I was trying not to be a nuisance. Well, maybe next year, I've got my face known for next year now.
Yeah.
And then I got a phone call. When I got home, there was a message on my answer machine. We've decided to give you a place.
Oh wow.
And they gave me the place on the course that year. And I was like on my own in my house, jumping up and down, leaping up and down in the air. Couldn't believe I got this place. The lady that had told me about clearing, and sometimes there are places, but there wouldn't be one that year. I rang her up and I said, I can't thank you enough because I wouldn't have known about clearing. They've given me a place. And she said, well, Karen, she said, you might not thank me when you get on the course because it's a really difficult course. It's not a couple of hours a week. It's 9 to 5 every day and it's really hard. And I said, well, I don't care. I'm just delighted I've got the place. And so in that first term,
Right.
everything that I applied to my karate, I applied to my studies. And everybody else on that course had either been to private school,
Yeah.
private schooling, were young, top grade A levels. And I'd gone in, I'd been out to school for 14 years. I'd had this access course I'd done, which I'd crammed into a year that was a 2-year course. And I'm looking at all their A levels and things. I'm thinking, oh my God. But I just had a lot of determination. And and also my sister was terminally ill. So I'd retire. I told the coach, the British coach, I'm retiring from competition because my sister is due to pass away when the Europeans are. I want to be with her when she passes. And I've started this video course, and this is the right time for me to retire.
Yeah.
So I did retire. I was with my sister when she passed away. And I think I took 2 days off from physio school when my sister passed away. And I just applied myself to physio. And at the end of the course, I ended up coming out with a first class honours.
Oh wow, well done you.
I couldn't believe, because I'd gone in as the dunce of the class. And
Well,
but
that doesn't surprise me, knowing some of the stuff that you've done, because it's about mindset, and you know, you got mindset in abundance, the right mindset in abundance. So yeah, well done you.
well, I think karate though. I think the karate helped you. I think I just applied everything I did in karate. I applied to my studies.
Yeah, yeah,
Um. So yeah. So something good came from that injury. It's a long,
yes,
long way round to tell the story, but that injury
no,
I
it's
got before the World Championship, it cost me in the World Championship, but it did me. It was sort of 10 times. I got 10 times from it what I would have done from getting a medal in that championship, and I
yeah,
got the career that I really wanted.
brilliant.
Um,
No, that's great. I mean, it's a fantastic story. It's through adversity sometimes it happens, and see the greater benefit, as they say.
yeah,
You know, and I think you know, I've got a couple of similar ones which yeah, I won't mention now, but you know, that it's a great story. So I mean, in sort of, we're getting towards the end of the podcast, and in closing, what are your goals for the future then? What do you intend to do? Is there anything that you still want to achieve?
well, at the moment, I'm just enjoying being semi-retired.
Hmm.
And I'm just catching up on things I never had a chance to catch up on. And there are things I'll want to do, like I want to learn Spanish. There's a few things I want to do, but
Hmm.
um, I'll probably have a better idea once I've caught up on the things that I've sort of been lacking because I've been traveling a lot.
Yeah,
So things around the house, I'm catching up on things like that and making my home the way I want it to be and really comfortable. And then who knows then? I mean, it's exciting really to have the opportunity to do something else as well. So uh,
yeah.
watch this page and we'll see see what happens next.
Well, fantastic. Well, perhaps we can when that those things happen, we can talk about that again sometime in the future. But listen, I want to say thank you very much. It's an absolutely fascinating story and journey of martial arts, and it's taken you to some awesome places. You know, I hope there are lots of young girls, young ladies listening to this, because, like I said, I've interviewed a lot of males, not so many females. There are a few that I've interviewed. So this is a great motivating story, certainly for me. And I'm hoping for lots of many other people, male and female. So I just want to say thank you very, very much for taking the time to share your story.
Well, thank you, Ray, for asking me. It's quite an honour actually. And thank you for making me feel so comfortable as well. I'm not really good at speaking about myself, so
Oh, you're very welcome. No, nobody really is, to be honest.
so thank you very much.
You're very welcome, but just stay on the line afterwards, and we'll chat, and then I'll get any information that you may want to put in the show notes and so on. So just leaves to say thank you very much to the Living Martial Arts podcast fans. I hope you've enjoyed listening to Karen as much as I have, and listen to her story. I hope it motivates and keeps all of you training, and those that are listening in this for the first time, I hope it gives you a push to start martial arts. It's a fantastic discipline, and it affects all different parts of your lives. So thank you very much. Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, bye bye.